Okay, everybody, good afternoon. Good to see you all. I'm Dan.
Good afternoon.
Chair of the City Planning Commission. I want to welcome you all to today's review session, September 6th, 2022. Hope everyone enjoyed their Labor Day weekend. And to all the parents, happy back to school week. To start, I wanted to just give a very quick shout out and thanks to the Vice Chairman, Ken Knuckles, for stepping in at the end of August while I was away with my family. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, very much. We all really appreciate it. We're very, very grateful. To Commissioner Kermani Fry, I was not here for your first meeting. And for that, I apologize. So I wanted to offer you my warmest welcome today. Really looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
And now for today's agenda, we're going to kick it off with a new housing proposal at 1880-1888 Coney Island Avenue in Midwood, Brooklyn. The proposal begins its journey through our public review process today with certification. It proposes to bring 230 new homes, approximately a quarter of them permanently affordable under the city's mandatory inclusionary housing program, also near the B and Q train station and multiple bus lines. And obviously 230 units is a good amount of new and affordable housing. And if approved, it would certainly help us to take a bite out of our housing crunch. And certainly, as we have discussed regularly, if we're going to make our city more affordable, we need to build more housing in all of our neighborhoods at all price points. We're also going to have a look today at some modifications proposed to the Domino site in Williamsburg before we prepare for this week's hearings. Now, this week's hearings are on for tomorrow, Wednesday. We usually have a little bit more of a gap between our review session and our public hearings, but today, because of the Labor Day holiday, we are on for tomorrow. We will have a hearing on 280 Bergen Street in Boerum Hill, Brooklyn, a mixed-use development with retail and community facility space, and we will be voting on the proposal for the 9th Street rezoning in Gowanus. In East New York, the very blandly named Gateway Site 26A and Phase B development, which would enable the creation of 750 units of affordable housing, and in Staten Island, a number of additions and subdivisions for homeowners. We're also going to have a couple of important updates related to issues that had been raised on projects that are already in public review, including Innovative Urban Village, which is a proposal, as you all know, by the locally based Christian Cultural Center in East New York, Brooklyn. The proposal seeks to bring an impressive 2,000 affordable homes, a trade school, grocery store, performing arts center, open space, and more. Commissioner Osorio had raised some questions regarding the resiliency features of the site, so we are certainly going to dive into that aspect in our follow-up. We also have updates on Innovation Queens, the project proposed for Astoria. We're going to hear about some changes proposed by the developers in response to comments that have happened in public review related to the building's design, to the open space, reduction in the number of proposed parking spaces, and also the resiliency work that would underpin the project. And finally, I just want to note for the commission that tomorrow the City Council is set to hold a hearing on the Bruckner Sites plan, which would create about 350 homes in the Bronx and in Throgs Neck, and also will hold a vote on the Hallett's North proposal in Astoria, which would create 1,400 homes, about 350 of them affordable, and an acre of public waterfront green space. The commission has voted to support these projects. I certainly think they are quite important to New York's goals of bringing more mixed income development to highly accessible areas of the city. So we will be monitoring that closely, but I wanted to let you know that that was happening. So with that, we're ready to go. Ryan, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and see if you could kick us off with our first project, which I believe is our Brooklyn certification.
Certainly. Thank you, and good afternoon to all. This is the review session for the New York City Planning Commission for Tuesday, September 6, 2022. Time is 1:06 p.m. and a quorum is present. The first item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Brooklyn Community District 12. And Lucia Capuccio is our presenter. Lucia?
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, perfect. 1 second. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Garodnick and Commissioners. Next slide, please. This is a private application from Plaza Realty LLC for a zoning map amendment from a C82 district to a C45A district within the Special Ocean Parkway District, and a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to facilitate the development of a new attached 2-building mixed-use development, including over 176,000 square feet of residential space, or 231 dwelling units, 60 of which will be permanently affordable, and over 36,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. Next slide, please. This project is located at 1888 Coney Island Avenue between Avenues O and P in Midwood Community District 12, Brooklyn. Next slide, please. So here's an aerial view looking north towards Prospect Park in Manhattan. The project is on the border of Midwood, a neighborhood in the center of South Brooklyn. It's bounded by Kensington and Flatbush to the north, Flatbush and Marine Park to the east, Homecrest and Sheepshead Bay to the south, and Borough Park to the west. The project area consists of 15 lots fronting on Coney Island Avenue. Coney Island Avenue is a major north-south mixed-use and commercial corridor that runs roughly 5 miles from Prospect Park to Coney Island. It is a 100-foot wide street with a variety of uses, including residential apartment buildings, mixed-use residential and commercial buildings, and retail stores, ranging from auto repair shops to big box stores. Next slide, please. So this is a similar view showing the project area within the context of the surrounding area. To the west of the development is the Special Ocean Parkway District, and to the east of the area are the elevated Q and B subway lines. The Kings Highway subway stop is approximately half a mile away from the development site. The area is also served by multiple bus lines. The B9 bus runs along Avenue N, connecting Bay Ridge to Marine Park. The B68 bus runs directly along Coney Island Avenue, connecting Prospect Park to Coney Island. And the B82 bus runs along Kings Highway, connecting Bensonhurst to Spring Creek. Next slide, please. We can see Coney Island Avenue in the center, a major north-south mixed-use and commercial corridor. The project area is outlined in light blue, with the development mid-block outlined in yellow. The light yellow lots on the map are all the residential uses in the surrounding area off of Coney Island Avenue, which range from single-family detached houses to medium-density apartment buildings. The purple lots are industrial uses. In this area, they are primarily auto-oriented shops and building supply stores. There's also a strong presence of commercial uses, seen in red, including the development site. These uses include office and home supply stores, insurance and law offices, and convenience stores, many with residential units located above. The project area is mapped in the C82 zoning district. A C82 district is a commercial district that allows automotive and other heavy commercial uses, along with commercial facilities. Community facilities. The C82 district permits these commercial uses at a maximum FAR of 2, with some community facilities allowed a maximum FAR of 4.8. It does not permit residential uses. The surrounding area is also zoned with low-density residential districts, including R41, R5, and R5B. R41 is a contextual residential district for 1 and 2 family homes with a maximum FAR of 0.75. The R5 district is a low-density general residence district that permits residential buildings up to 1.25 FAR and community buildings up to 2 FAR. The R5B is a contextual residential district primarily consisting of 3-story row houses with a max FAR of 1.35. Directly across the street on Coney Island Avenue to the east is an R7A district with some C23 commercial overlays. R7A districts allow for buildings up to 4 FAR and generally yield 7 to 8-story buildings. Next slide, please. The project area is also within the Special Ocean Parkway District, which was approved in 1977 and includes blocks east and west of Ocean Parkway. The Special Ocean Parkway District was established to preserve the character of 1- and 2-family homes along Ocean Parkway itself, and to limit the proliferation and bulk of community facilities within the area. In 1993, the Special Ocean Parkway Subdistrict was established. The subdistrict encourages large 1- or 2-family homes and limits permitted FAR to 1.5. As you can see here, the development site is within the most eastern block of the Ocean Parkway District, and portions of 2 irregularly shaped lots within the development site are in the Ocean Parkway Subdistrict. The portions of the 2 lots within the subdistrict will not be developed and will remain as landscaped open space. Therefore, this project is not impacted by bulk or FAR limitations for the subdistrict. Next slide, please. This view takes a western aerial view to show a complete picture of the project area and development site. The development site consists of 7 lots, 2 of which are irregularly shaped and will only be partially developed, with the undeveloped portion remaining as landscaped open space, as I previously mentioned. As seen here, 4 lots in the development area are currently improved with a Staples office supply store. The lot next to the Staples is improved with a surface parking lot for the Staples. The remaining 2 lots to the left previously were improved with a 2-story commercial building. Shown here is the white building to the left of Staples. This 2-story building was demolished in July 2022, and the lots are now vacant. The applicant has received a self-certification from the Department of Buildings and plans to use these 2 lots as a parking lot as an interim use while the application moves to the land use review process. Next slide, please. So looking southwest from the corner of Avenue O and Coney Island Avenue, we see the project area, which consists of mixed-use commercial and residential buildings, and the development site, which consists of the Staples store, Staples parking lot, and the currently vacant land. Next slide, please. This view looks west directly at the proposed development site on Coney Island Avenue. You can see the 2 lots that were formerly improved with a commercial building are now vacant. Next slide, please. This view looks east from the development site at Coney Island Avenue at the attached 3-story townhouses directly across the street from the development site. As previously mentioned, these are zoned R7A C23. These were rezoned as part of the 2006 Midwood rezoning. In the Midwood rezoning CPC report, the commission noted that the R7A C23 district was appropriate due to the Coney Island being a wide street and a major corridor with bus lines and nearby subway lines. Next slide, please. So the proposed actions would facilitate the development of an 8-story mixed-use commercial and residential building, totaling approximately 216,000 square feet. Next slide, please. The proposed development would include 179,967 square feet of residential space. Residential units would occupy floors 2 through 8. The residential portion would include approximately 231 dwelling units, of which 60 would be permanently affordable to households with incomes at or below 60% of the area median income, or AMI, pursuant to MIH option 1. The development would also have 36,456 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor. Parking would be provided on 2 cellar floors. The applicant is currently proposing 242 accessory parking spaces, although only 86 are required by the zoning district. Next slide, please. The proposed actions include a zoning map amendment to change the existing C82 district along Coney Island Avenue to a C45A within the Special Ocean Parkway District. The proposed C45A district would alter the permitted uses under current C82 zoning to include a wider range of commercial and retail uses, as well as residential use. The proposed C45A would increase the maximum permitted FAR for commercial uses from 2 to 4. In the C45A district, 4.5 FAR is permitted for community facility uses, and residential regulations are subject to the R7A equivalent. The R7A zoning is a contextual district where quality housing regulations are mandatory. R7A districts allow for buildings up to 4.6 FAR when providing inclusionary housing. Next slide, please. The C45A district is a regional commercial district that allows a wide range of uses, including larger retail stores and commercial uses above the ground floor level. It results in buildings around 8 or 9 stories that come up to the street with a setback from the street between 4 or 7 stories. Residential developed in a C45A is a typical New York City apartment building, similar to those found in the neighborhoods surrounding Prospect Park or along Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn. Next slide, please. The applicant also proposes a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to map MIH coterminous with the C45A district, creating permanently affordable housing via MIH options 1 and 2. At this time, the applicant is proposing to comply with MIH option 1, which would make 60 units permanently affordable at an average of 60% AMI. Next slide, please. Pursuant to Local Law 78 of 2021, effective June 1st of this year, this application requires a racial equity report on housing and opportunity because it would increase the permitted residential floor area by at least 50,000 square feet. The applicant states that the proposal would produce new income restricted housing units in a location that has an area median income slightly higher than Brooklyn and New York City as a whole and is highly accessible to public transit. The proposal also states that it will produce ADA compliant housing, which will bolster options for independent living in the community. The area median household income for the project area is around $65,700, which is just slightly higher than the median income for Brooklyn and New York City. Using current year US HUD income limits, the applicant proposes to provide MIH units that meet 60% AMI with approximate monthly rents ranging from $1,400 to $1,800 at approximate income levels ranging from $56,000 to $80,000 per household size, ranging from 1 to 4 persons. Next slide, please. As per the report, the racial makeup of Sheepshead Bay, Garrettson Beach, and Homecrest is identified as being 63% white, 20% Asian, 9% Hispanic, and 4% Black. From 2010 to 2020, the area saw a modest 6% increase in population, with increases in the Asian, Black, and Hispanic populations, and a decrease in the white population. Next slide, please. In summary, this is a private application for a zoning map amendment from a C82 district to a C45A within the Special Ocean Parkway District, and a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to facilitate the development of a new 8-story mixed-use building, including 179,967 square feet of residential space, or 231 units with 60 permanently affordable units, and 36,456 square feet of commercial space. And thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Lucia, for that. I'm going to jump in and get the ball rolling here, and then I will turn to my colleagues. First, I just want to go a little deeper in the point about the special district and the special sub-district. So we have a Special Ocean Parkway District, which was approved in 1977, correct?
Yeah.
And then we have a sub-district, in which this site or part of this site is actually in. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's 2 lots within the project area that are irregularly shaped. So there's portions past 100 feet of depth that are not in the project area, but are in the lots. So they're going to remain in the sub-district and the R5 zoning, and they will not be developed. So they will be landscaped open space in the back of the development.
Okay. All right. And then the C45A. You noted that would give this site the functional equivalent of an R7A.
That's correct.
Now, when you showed the image of Coney Island Avenue, with this proposal and what is on the other side of the street, these buildings would be somewhat larger than the buildings across the street. But if I understood your presentation correctly, the other side of the street is also zoned R7A. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So it's mapped R7A across the street. They're built to 3 stories. But if free development were to occur, they could build up to the R7A equivalent. So I'm sorry, R7A. So about 7 to 9 story buildings.
Okay. And on parking, give us let's go back to that for a second. How many parking spaces here and how many are required?
So the applicant is proposing 242 accessory spaces in the 2 cellar levels of the building. This is in consultation in talks they've had with the community board. So it came from a community board request. They are meeting the max requirements in the zoning district are 259. So they are within their right to have that many spots. But there's only 86 spots required per the zoning district when it comes down to some inclusionary housing requires less parking.
Okay, so it's max is 259, min is 86. They're proposing 242.
Yes, and the applicant can speak more to this at the public hearing. But it did come out of talks they had with the community board, but they are amenable to changing the amount of parking.
Okay, and the last point I just wanted to raise is really a design question about what appears to be a rather long, flat wall of building here, and whether there are tools available for the applicant to address that as part of their proposal. And that may not be a question for you, Lucia, but you can feel free to address if you think you can, but I just wanted to.
Sure, I can bring that back to the applicant and they can be ready to speak to the design at the public hearing. I will note that the rendering does comply with the R7A requirements for the district. I should also note the design is illustrative as well. So it does not need to be the final design, but I'll have the applicant speak more to that.
Wonderful. All right, thank you. Commissioner Dweck.
So I just want to note if there's a distinction between the R7A mapped across the street not being MIH with the height restricted to 80 feet versus the proposal, which is an MIH proposal, which would give them the right to build 90 feet. Am I correct in my statement?
Yeah, that is correct.
Got it. So what would be a similar zoning in the E zoning that would allow a building to be the equivalent of an R6A, for example? And what would the height be on that?
We can look into that unless Lucia, you have that off the top of your head. I don't. But we
No,
can,
yeah.
we can get the parameters.
My concern is that 80 feet is zoned across the street. 95 feet might be a little bit high for this district. So I think it would be the first one at that height. So the distinction between the R7A MIH versus just old R7A is 15 feet, which is a significant amount of height. So I'd like to get some more clarification or options on that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions? Okay, Commissioner Bozarg.
I guess I just wanted to follow up on that question. I'm trying to understand, but the way we should think about this is that they're getting that extra, part of how they're getting that extra height is by providing the MIH units. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Did you have other questions, Commissioner? I'm sorry. No,
Yeah, I
okay,
just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Bozard's.
go ahead, Commissioner, go ahead.
So I believe that they are getting the extra height based on the R7A MIH, but there are other options that would force MIH, but can be of a lower height.
I understand. And then potentially fewer.
Fewer apartments, but again, and again, we haven't heard from the community board, or we haven't heard from the council members, so we don't know, or the borough president, so there's a lot. It's just the beginning of the process. I just wanted to make the distinction between the R7A across the street and the R7A proposed.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Okay, and as you correctly noted, Commissioner Dweck, we are at the beginning of the journey here, so we will look forward to revisiting this and hearing more. And with that, I thank you, Commissioners. Lucia, thank you very much. This item is certified. Brian, let's go on to the next.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Lucia. The second item on our agenda is a post-referral review of a non-ULURP modification to a previously approved special permit in Brooklyn Community District 2, and our presenter is Syed Ahmed. Syed?
Hi, Ryan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. And it is in Community District 1.
Oh, thank you.
Next slide, please. This is a private application requesting a non-ULURP modification to previously approved 2014 large-scale general development for the Domino Sugar Factory. Next slide, please. Site D is subject of this application, and it is on the right adjacent to the Williamsburg Bridge, located on the East River waterfront in Brooklyn Community District 1. The applicant is proposing changes to Site D approved plans, which include modifications to the building footprint and zoning envelope to accommodate available floor area, resulting in the creation of additional public open space, improved visual access to the East River, and better and more functional building design. Next slide, please. On this slide, Site D is on the left, outlined in purple, and is proposed to be developed with 2 residential towers, providing approximately 10,000 square feet of retail space and 555 apartments, of which 120 would be affordable. Next slide, please. Building D, as approved in 2014, is on your left, and as modified is on your right. The applicant proposes to eliminate the 3-story sky bridge shown on the left. The elimination of the sky bridge will remove the need for a previously approved authorization that allowed a 5-foot permitted obstruction in a required visual corridor. The tower heights and the floor area will remain the same, but under the current proposal, the 2 top floors of both towers will be set back from the facade. Next slide, please. The other modifications include increase in the height of the podium from 45 feet to 65 feet. The 20-foot increment in the height of the podium will provide a more substantial base for the 239 and 52-story residential towers. The roof of the podium will serve as an open space amenity for the building residents. Next slide, please. The proposed modifications to the zoning envelope will increase the width of the western 39-story tower by 5 foot, expanding towards the East River or River Street. Similarly, the eastern tower, 52 stories in height, will expand its zoning envelope by 2 feet towards South 5th Street. This 2-foot increase in the building envelope will result in an increase in the maximum width of the wall facing the shoreline from 179 feet to 181 feet. Despite the slight increase in the width of buildings, the buildings have 645 square feet less floor area than what was permitted in 2014. Next slide, please. In addition, the applicant removed a 24-foot by 85-foot portion of the building's southeast corner at Kent Avenue and South 5th Street, shown here outlined in yellow. The removal of the corner will create 1,300 square feet of publicly accessible open space that will allow for better visual access to East River from Kent Avenue. This removal of the corner would also remove about 8,000 square feet of the floor area from the previously approved development on this site. Next slide, please. The applicant proposes to reduce the width of private River Street between South 3rd and South 5th Streets from 30 feet to 25 feet. River Street is a two-lane north to south one-way street with a striped no standing zone on its west side, adjacent to Domino Park. The no standing zone was used by illegally parked or idling cars and created traffic nuisance. The no standing lane will be eliminated and would result in a 5-foot expansion of the Domino Square Park. This will increase the size of the park by 900 square feet. Otherwise, the design and features of Domino Square Park will remain unchanged. Next slide, please. Finally, the applicant proposes 2 changes to urban design guidelines affecting the tower tops of buildings A and D, which are codified in the large scale drawings. These changes will allow for a modified design for building D and to reflect the build condition of building A. Next slide, please. The application was referred out for 30 days to Community Board 1 for comments. We have not received Community Board's recommendation yet. According to the applicant, they presented the proposed changes to large-scale general development plan to Community Board 1 on August 9. Community Board asked questions regarding the affordable units in the building, which are 120 out of 555 units. The applicant assured the board that even though building envelopes have increased slightly, the site still contains the allowable floor area assigned to it under the large-scale development plan approved in 2014. They assured the community board that roof of the building podium will not be used for commercial uses and will be an open space amenity for building residents. Regarding the 5-foot reduction in the width of the private River Street, the applicant told the board that DOT and FDNY have approved the changes in the width of the street. In conclusion, next slide, please. In conclusion, the proposed modifications to 2014 large-scale general development would result in the creation of additional public open space, better visual access to the East River, and more functional building design. This concludes my presentation, and I will take any questions you might have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Syed. So if I understand you correctly, the tower heights are the same as they were previously, but the top is just set back partially. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the reduction of River Street would have the effect of increasing the size of Domino Park?
Yes, by 900 square feet.
Okay. And the initial approval of square footage here was more than what is being proposed with this modification. So they're shrinking the actual development with this modification?
It is 645 square feet less than what was approved in 2014.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Let me see if there are questions from the commissioner. Commissioner Marin.
Thank you, Chair Garodny. I have one question. If we can put up on the screen here the overall floor plan or site plan, please. I have a question concerning the street width, because on the building D and then going north to the park, northwest to the park, the street is being narrowed to 25 feet. So what happens to the 2 blocks north of the park? Are those streets already built and at 30 feet? What's going to happen to the existing condition or to the condition of those 2 streets?
They will remain at 30 feet width. the street remains at 30 feet width north
So-
of Dominic Square Park.
Can we go to the overall plan, please, so we can
It
see how
is-
this works out?
Yes.
I just want to take a look at how this jogs.
I think it is
What
slide
the-
3. Jeff, it is slide 3. So here, can we go back to the next slide? After this one?
Slide 4, I think.
Yes, this one. So up to Dominic Square Park.
There you go. This one right here. There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you're saying that Buildings D and Dominic Square Park, that street that runs across at an angle and then comes across to River Street, that's going to be 25 feet up until the point that you get to the existing Domino Sugar Refinery, which will
Yes.
then go to 30 and empty out at 30 at the other side.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. Said, I had a quick question regarding the public engagement for this proposal. You mentioned that there was a presentation to the community board. You haven't heard back, but do you know if there's been any additional public engagement around this? Particularly, has the Los Sures Coalition been involved in this at all?
I am not aware of that if the applicant has reached out to Los Sures, but we recommend that they reach out to the council member, local groups, and community board specifically.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, comments? Commissioner Bozorg?
I had a question about the urban design guidelines, just not knowing the full history or remembering it here. Were the urban design guidelines created just for the Domino site, or is it a larger waterfront that the design guidelines or waterfront area that the design guidelines apply to? And then I think my question, the related question is, does this change the guidelines for more, does changing the guidelines impact more projects, or is it just specific to these sites?
These guidelines are just specific to Domino Square block and these sites. And this is one of the second last site which would be developed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Syed, let me ask you, before I call for the vote, which I'm going to call for in a moment, I'd like just a quick explanation for the commission as to what exactly we are doing here, because this is a proposal to modify a previously approved large-scale development. And I am in a moment going to call for a assent by a voice vote to send a letter to the buildings department to note that this modification as proposed here does not require ULURP. Can you or Ryan explain that dynamic to us?
So do you want me to take a stab at it? Okay.
Yes.
So these are non-ULURP modification. Once upon a time, we also referred to these as minor modifications. But the essentially what the question is are there do the changes require any further review for land use considerations? So if there had been an additional waiver that was needed to accommodate these changes, this would not be a non-ULURP modification. Or if it touched on some of the findings as sort of outlined in the prior approval, if the commission had said in the report, we think that the street widths need to be this street width, right? And that is, to qualify for some of the findings, then that also would have precluded it from a non-ULURP modification. But in this case, all of those, none of those appear to have been touched, or new waivers are not necessary in this case. So in this case, staff feel that this is a appropriate non-ULURP modification for the commission to make.
Great. Thank you very much, Ryan. I don't know if there are any questions on that, but if not, okay. I see none. So with that, I am going to seek assent by a voice vote here to send that letter to the building department that this modification is a non-ULURP modification. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right, the ayes have it. Thank you very much, Syed. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for your explanation at the end there. And let us move on to our pre-public hearing review items.
Certainly.
you.
Item, yes. So we have the third item on our agenda. It's a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Brooklyn Community District 2. Amrita, correct me if I'm wrong. I've not been
That's right.
very accurate on that. So our presenter is Amrita Mahesh. Amrita?
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. Next slide, please. This is an application for a zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment to facilitate a 4-building, approximately 238,000 square foot, predominantly residential development with 300 apartments, approximately 90 of which would be affordable apartments, 9,600 square feet of commercial space, and 10,000 square feet of community facility space in the Borum Hill neighborhood of Community District 2 in Brooklyn. Next slide. The applicant is seeking a zoning map amendment from an M12 district, an R6B district, to an R7A district, as well as a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area. Next slide. The project area is in the southern edge of the Borum Hill neighborhood between downtown Brooklyn and Gowanus. The surrounding area is developed with a wide range of building typologies and mix of uses, including 2 to 3 story mixed use and residential buildings, multifamily apartment buildings, institutional buildings, houses of worship, offices, and some lofts and warehouses. The Commission may recall a recent application for a rezoning, 98 3rd Avenue, which is located on the same block as this application and is shown here in blue. The 98 3rd Avenue rezoning was adopted by the City Council with no modifications on June 16th. Next slide. The project area is mapped with an M12 light industrial district shown here in purple. As part of the 98 3rd Avenue rezoning, the frontage along 3rd Avenue was amended from the M12 district to a medium density R7D district with a C24 commercial overlay, and a small interior portion was amended to an R6B residential district. Other zoning districts in the surrounding area include a number of medium density R6 and R7 residential districts shown here in yellow, and are largely improved with row houses and multifamily residential buildings. The special downtown Brooklyn district is located 3 blocks north of the project area, and areas to the south and east, including portions along 4th Avenue, are within the special Gowanus mixed-use district. Next slide. Here is a zoomed-in plan of Block 388 facing northwest. The development site consists of lots 19, 51, and 42 shown here in yellow. The development site has a total area of approximately 50,700 square feet. The lots shaded in pink along the 3rd Avenue frontage and the Nevin Street frontage are city-owned properties under the control of HPD. They are currently used as accessory surface parking and accessory office space by the neighboring industrial business owned by the applicant, located on Lot 19, for a long-term lease agreement with HPD. The lease restricts uses on these lots to uses accessory to the industrial facility. If this application is approved, the applicant has indicated that they would be open to discussing the release of the leased parcels in order to facilitate a future HPD proposal on the city-owned lots. The project area was previously in the Bergen Street Urban Renewal Area, which was approved by the City Planning Commission in July of 1971, and it expired in 2011. Next slide. Here are some images of the project area. This is a view of Bergen Street looking west, and the development site, Lot 19, is seen on the left of the image. Next slide. This is a view of the project area from the corner of Nevin Street and Bergen Street looking south. Next slide. This is a view of the corner of Nevins and Wyckoff Streets. The city-owned lots used as surface parking are seen on the left. Next slide. And here's a view of Wyckoff Street looking west and a portion of the development site, lot 51. Next slide. And this is a view of the corner of 3rd Avenue and Bergen Street looking south. The NYCHA Wyckoff Gardens campus is seen in the background. Next slide. The proposed development would comprise 4 buildings and have a total floor area of approximately 238,000 square feet. It would include approximately 228,000 square feet of residential space, 9,600 square feet of commercial space, 10,000 square feet of community facility space, and 125 parking spaces. The image here is oriented facing south. Sycamore Place, a 9-story, 95-foot tall mixed-use building, would be located on Lot 19, fronting on Bergen Street. It would contain approximately 170,000 square feet of residential space, 4,600 square feet of ground floor retail space closest to 3rd Avenue, and it would also include 10,000 square feet of ground floor and cellar community facility space. Next slide. This image is oriented facing north. Linden Place, a 9-story, 95-foot tall residential building, would be located on the south side of Lot 19, fronting on Wyckoff Street. It would contain approximately 33,000 square feet of residential floor area. Additionally, 2 3-story residential townhouse-style buildings would be located on either side of the existing 3-story townhouse buildings on Wyckoff Street, and each would contain approximately 2,400 square feet of floor area. Next slide. Here are some renderings of the proposed development. This is a view of the largest building, Sycamore Place, along Bergen Street. Next slide. Here is another view of Sycamore Place along Bergen Street looking west. Next slide. And this is an image of the Linden Place building along the Wyckoff Street frontage. Next slide. At certification, this application had proposed a zoning map amendment from an M12 district to an R7D C24 district along the 3rd Avenue frontage and an R7A district for the remainder of the project area. Next slide. The application has now been amended to reflect the adoption of the 98 3rd Avenue rezoning, and the applicant is seeking a zoning map amendment from an M12 district and R6B district to an R7A district to facilitate their proposal. Next slide. In addition, a zoning text amendment is being requested to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area coterminous with the rezoning area. MIH options 1 and 2 would be mapped. The proposed development is anticipated to comply with option 2, which requires that 30% of the new residential floor area, which is approximately 68,500 square feet, be reserved for incomes averaging 80% AMI and below. 90 of the proposed 300 dwelling units would be subject to these requirements. Next slide. This application was certified on June 6th. Brooklyn Community Board 2 held a public hearing on June 15th and voted to disapprove the application on June 27th, 6 in favor of disapproval and 3 abstentions. The Community Board expressed concerns regarding the provision of 125 parking spaces and recommended the applicant seek a special permit to waive all required parking. The board objected to the height and scale of the project, particularly in the middle of the block. The board noted that the proposal does not indicate a strong commitment to reasonable affordability and that the applicant did not provide evidence of green strategies and MWBE or other progressive workforce development awareness. The board also noted that they were moved by the Borum Hill Association's testimony, objecting to the lack of community outreach, poor architectural context relative to the historic district directly adjacent, and the lack of reasonable affordability for residents of NYCHA Wyckoff Gardens. Next slide. The Brooklyn Borough President held a public hearing on July 21st and voted to approve the application with conditions. that the CPC evaluate the environmental review for this rezoning application to ensure that it is legally defensible, and that the two rezoning applications, 280 Bergen Street and 98 3rd Avenue, account for each other. The applicant provide deeper affordability than proposed under MIH option 2, and consult Wyckoff Gardens residents on the beneficial uses for the non-residential space. The CPC and or the City Council map only MIH option 1 over the rezoning area, and that HPD initiate public outreach and an RFP process to develop a mixed-use 100% affordable building on these city-owned sites. Additionally, prior to consideration by City Council, that the applicant commit to retaining a qualified administering agent for the 280 Bergen Street MIH lottery, incorporating resiliency and sustainability measures such as blue and green roofs, passive house design, and or on-site energy generation, coordinating with DEP, Parks, and DOT to install rain gardens along the Bergen and Wyckoff Street frontages, reaching out to Gowanus businesses at risk of displacement, including innovation and maker uses, to tenant the proposed commercial space, retaining Brooklyn-based contractors and suppliers, and providing employment opportunities to area residents. Regarding the concerns about the EAS, the department would note that the environmental review for 280 Bergen Street has analyzed the potential combined impacts from both projects. Additionally, I would note that in response to community feedback, the applicant has submitted a pre-application statement in July and has begun the pre-certification process for a special permit to waive all required parking spaces. The single story at the rear of the two larger buildings, which previously accommodated parking, would be removed, allowing for an interior ground floor courtyard. The parking entrance would be replaced with a loading berth and emergency access. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Amrita. Let me run through a couple of questions here to get the ball rolling. First is the borough president made a recommendation about starting a public outreach process for the city sites. Can you just walk us through the dynamic of the city sites here? My understanding is the most significant one is on Nevin Street, but there are others. Can you just lay that out for us?
Sure. There's a collection of lots along 3rd Avenue, which are city-owned, as well as one lot along the Nevin Street frontage, which is slightly larger. All of these city-owned sites are leased to the applicant, their subsidiary Ulano Corporation, which is the industrial facility which is currently making use of these parking spaces. The city-owned lots are subject to a long-term lease agreement, and my understanding is that the lease expires in 2063. But the applicant has been in conversations with HPD over the years, and they've indicated that they are willing to release the leases so that HPD can proceed with an RFP process. With regards to when that may happen, HPD has let us know that they are committed to providing affordable housing in this part of the city, especially as a follow-up to the work that's already happening in Gowanus. But they will have to kind of go through the competitive review process and engage in extensive community outreach to identify the goals that would have to go into the RFP. So that outreach process has to happen before the issuance of the RFP.
Okay. So interestingly, the sites that are city-owned also happen to be leased on a long-term lease to the applicant that is before us on this proposal for 280 Bergen Street. Is that right?
That's correct.
And I guess those conversations are ongoing as to when they will relinquish their rights, or if they will relinquish their rights to those leases.
That's right.
Okay. Can you go back, and forgive me, go back to that little sliver between the 98 3rd Avenue site and the 280 Bergen proposal?
Sure.
And if you could just run through that one more time, because there's a change here.
Absolutely. Jeff, can we pull up slide 6, please? Slide 6 or actually slide 17, either one works. So lot 42 is the one in question here. So lot 42 is part of the 280 Bergen applicant's proposed development site, but it was within the project area of the previously approved 98 3rd Avenue rezoning. So the 98 3rd Avenue rezoning sought to rezone the 3rd Avenue frontage to R7DC24. And lot 42 would have remained M12, a sliver of M12. So at the time, to avoid that sort of sliver of M12, the 98 3rd Avenue applicant had proposed to extend the existing R6B district that is in the mid-block portion along Wyckoff Street over to lot 42 as well. And that rezoning was approved. But given that this applicant owns lot 42, they're proposing a follow-up to rezone lot 42 from R6B to R7A to facilitate their proposal.
Okay, so this was a bit of it was an add-on to the 98 3rd Avenue proposal and connected it to the existing R6A, I'm sorry, the R6B zoning that was there. But now, as part of this proposal, the applicant is suggesting, okay, well, this is one of our sites, make it consistent with the rest of our site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the applicant can speak
Last
more
question.
as well to that aspect.
Okay, great. Actually, maybe two more questions for me. The community board disapproved. There were concerns about parking, among other things. And you noted that the applicant has started a special permit process to waive all parking spaces here.
That's right.
So that special permit will follow this action. So we will see this, we'll have our public hearing on 280 Bergen, and down the line, we will see this special permit application, which would allow them to waive their parking.
That is correct. So it would be a separate application that follows this rezoning application.
Okay. And the last one is really a question about the renderings of Sycamore Place. It looks like a rather long wall, as sort of the same observation that I made on the Coney Island Avenue proposal a moment ago. But the design question of that long flat frontage and whether the zoning or whether the applicant's own interests might allow for a little bit more diversity in the frontage, or a little bit more, I'm not really sure what the right word is for it, but just it feels like a very long stretch of uninterrupted building and what the options might be there.
Absolutely. We have worked with the applicant to allow for a little bit of articulation and some recesses and those types of facade treatments along this frontage, but we can have them respond more to what else they can do to mitigate the scale and the sheer sort of length of the street wall along here. We can relay this comment to the applicant.
Thank you for that. Let me go to Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. Amrith, I have two questions. The first of which is the applicant is proposing an MIH option 2, which in the text indicates that the targeted AMI would likely be around $78,800 per annum, with a monthly rent of just under $2,000. What, if you know, what is the average AMI of this community board? What is the AMI, I should say, of this community board?
The AMI for this Brooklyn Heights Fort Greene Puma is $99,253 annually.
99,000. Well, okay. No doubt some would say that reflects the gentrification in that area. And number two is in reference to the borough president's observation about the secra.
Mhm.
Is it the position of the borough president that the secra or the EIS performed in this instance is somehow inadequate? Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Our understanding is that the borough president was flagging that the two applications were sort of staggered and simply wanted the department to confirm that the two EASs, 98 3rd Avenue and 280 Bergens, had accounted for each other. And we have worked with our environmental review division to confirm that that is indeed the case. Both projects have accounted for each other, and any sort of combined impacts have been accounted for.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bozarg.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I had another question just on that. I think it was lot 42 that the chair was asking about. So can you just walk us through the difference between R6B and R7A? I'm trying to understand what the impact of that difference is, and then in relation to the proposed development site plan on page I think it was slide 12 that showed they're only proposing a 3-story townhome. Does that mean that's underbuilt to R7A? Is that like, just trying to understand what R7A on that lot gets that is different from those R6B homes that it's right adjacent to?
Sure.
I guess it's on both wings, not just lot 42.
Yes. So R6B allows for a maximum of 2.2 FAR with MIH, and R7A is around 4.6 FAR. So on lot 42 alone, that I believe is a difference of around 4,000 square feet of additional density. While the applicant is proposing a townhome style building there, they have the ability to draw that floor area and place it across the site because it is one large development site. So one of the larger buildings can accommodate that additional density. I would also note that in the zoning, because of the presence of the R6B lower density district, there is this sort of step down bulk rule as well that kind of ensures that there is a bit of a transition. So that's another sort of incentive for the applicant to move that additional floor area around to elsewhere on the site. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that does. That's super helpful. And then I just had one other question. You know, in the materials and in some of the community board comments that was raising concerns about, you know, the applicant not engaging Wyckoff Gardens residents sufficiently. Is that something we've actually heard from Wyckoff Gardens residents as well, or the resident association, or is that the community board raising those flags? I'm just kind of curious if DCP or the applicant has heard that consistently from others as well.
The department has not heard directly from the NYCHA tenants associations about this aspect. We are hearing about it through the community board.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kermani Fry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. So the first question was asked and answered by Commissioner Bozorg about the NYCHA residents and if we were hearing from them directly or the community board was hearing from them directly. My second question is on the applicant's inclusion of community facility space that you mentioned, and is that space for free, for rent, for anyone, for permanent? Is it, yeah, just a little bit more on that, since that seems to be the amenity.
Sure, we can relay that question to the applicant who can respond at public hearing their tenanting strategy and what they've envisioned for the types of uses that will be occupying the community facility space.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burney.
Thank you. Amrita, just a couple of questions. Just following up on what the chair was asking about the parking waiver. You were saying that their application for a waiver will go through, but I'm wondering about the timing. Is it possible that we will end up voting on the project before the waiver's been granted? Or how is that going to be coordinated?
So this would be treated as a standalone rezoning application. It's not directly tied to the special permit in any way. The applicant is kind of following up with a separate special permit application. So the timing entirely depends on how quickly we're able to process that application. There will also be any kind of environmental review follow-up needed for that. That has to happen as well. I don't have an answer on whether that can happen before vote, but we can certainly look into the timeline a bit more closely and get back to you.
I mean, obviously, it would be far better if that did happen before the vote, because then we would know what the project was. My second question was about the R7A and about the 9-story building and the concern that the community board expressed about the size of the development. And, you know, one could argue that it's one thing to put a 9-story building on 3rd Avenue. It's quite another to put a 9-story building mid-block on Bergen and Wyckoff. And I wonder, did the applicant have any response to that? Was there any consideration by the applicant or even by the department about sticking with the R6B for that type of mid-block infill?
We can certainly relay this comment to the applicant and have them speak a bit more to why they believe the 9 stories on the R7A is appropriate here in the mid-block area. But I would flag that the department has always kind of viewed the adjacency to the NYCHA Wyckoff Gardens complex as it's a different sort of context. Right across the street, we have the 21-story NYCHA Wyckoff development as well. So that's just sort of an additional layer to keep in mind, but we can have the applicant respond.
I think a lot of people would argue that the Wyckoff is a typology not to be emulated anywhere else. So, and in response to the chair's issue about articulation, I mean, obviously, if you look at the typology of these blocks, long streets of uniform facades are not uncommon, although there is, I take the point about the level of detail that's applied to that facade, which you see in kind of typical brownstone. But I think, I don't think we need to worry about the length of the building because most of those streets are continuous facades down the block. But I am concerned about the 9 stories mid-block on narrow streets, and maybe they can address that.
Absolutely. We can certainly request the applicant team to speak to that aspect at public hearing tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio.
Thanks so much, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. I had a couple quick questions. One was, I'm wondering if you know, or if you can request that the applicant can share a little bit, what's been the response to the requests to consider going beyond MIH option 2? Whether the applicant is open or what's the response in general? I was wondering if there's anything you can share with us on this regard.
At this time, I believe the applicant is still proposing MIH option 2, and we can certainly have them speak a bit more to whether or not they are able to accommodate the community's suggestion to go deeper than MIH option 2.
Thank you very much. Building on Chair Garlick's question about HPD's plan or the HPD's ownership of the 2 adjacent sites. Do we know what is HPD's plan or vision for these sites?
There isn't a plan or vision yet, as HPD does undertake an extensive outreach process before outlining even the program and the vision for the site, for the RFP. So HPD has let us know that this is definitely on their radar and a site that the sites that they are looking to kind of proceed with when resources become available, but there isn't a clear sort of program proposed yet.
Gotcha. Thank you. In terms of green infrastructure, has there been anything new or in response to some of the comments we received from the borough president in this regard?
The applicant, we can ask them to respond to their concerns on the green strategies at the hearing tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gold.
Thank you. Just one point to follow up there along the same lines. The disconnect between the community board on parking versus the borough president, presumably is that, I don't know the right way to frame it, but is that philosophical then, right? The community board had a big hang up on the parking side and the borough president wasn't as concerned about it. Maybe you could speak a little bit to that and just how that sort of lays out.
Our understanding is that the borough president as well is supportive of parking waivers and elimination of parking in transit-rich areas. So I do believe that the board and the borough president are aligned in their thinking.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's see, are there any other questions or comments? I see none at the moment. All right, Amrita, thank you so much for that. We will send this one off to a public hearing tomorrow. So we will be ready. That is our one pre-public hearing review. Let's move on to future votes. And by future, we mean tomorrow future. So go ahead, Ryan.
Yes, so for future votes, so for consideration on August 24th, 2022, staff have prepared reports for the 9th Street rezoning. I believe that Jonah Brogoff is here with a quick discussion. Jonah?
Thanks, Ryan. Hi, Commissioners. So the department would like to recommend approval of this application, which will facilitate the development of 48 units, 13 of which would be permanently affordable, and ground floor commercial space and a walkable transit-rich area with access to major job hubs and situated between 2 subway stations and along a bus and bicycle route. We also want to note that 9th Street serves as an important east-west corridor that links the neighborhoods of Gowanus and Park Slope with Carroll Gardens, which staff believe bolsters the rationale for height and density under R7A, a zoning district that was also mapped along Union Street, another east-west cross-canal corridor, just a few blocks to the north, in conjunction with the Gowanus neighborhood plan. The current M21 zoning, if you go to the next slide, the current zoning hasn't been updated since 1961 and simply doesn't reflect the predominant character of the project area among the non-applicant owned lots. 12 out of 13 are residential buildings that predate the current zoning, while the one remaining warehouse property is a contractor's garage with an owner that's expressed support for the proposal. Under the proposed R7A M14 district, all of these residential uses would be brought into conformance with zoning, enabling owners to make much needed improvements, gain access to financing, and enlarge or redevelop over time. The MX designation would also ensure that any current or future industrial uses are conforming, as well as allow industrial and residential uses to locate side by side or in the same building, reinforcing the block's mixed-use character. Department staff also recognize the concerns about the proximity to the industrial business zone or IBZ and support the broader goals of IBZs in New York City. With respect to this application, we want to emphasize that the rezoning boundaries were carefully drawn to exclude the IBZ while the department takes a case-by-case look at the relationship to neighboring industrial uses. Here, there are existing homes and apartment buildings directly adjacent to the IBZ today and will continue to remain in the foreseeable future. And the businesses within the IBZ along 9th Street include recording studios, a coffee roaster, distributor, and then directly adjacent to the proposed rezoning boundary on the west side of the area, there's a coffee shop, retailer, and event space, all of which can and do operate near residential use with minimal land use conflicts. Further, the 506 3rd Avenue application, which was recently approved in 2021, is located just 2 blocks to the south and involved the mapping of a C44A or R7A equivalent district, which is also adjacent to the IBZ. Lastly, staff want to note that the proposal is consistent with the department's 2021 Gowanus IBZ vision plan, which identified 9th Street as a mixed-use corridor that can support both residential and non-residential uses outside the IBZ at an appropriate scale. Staff want to acknowledge that, just acknowledging the recommendations about advancing the vision plan, and we seek to continue engaging with local businesses and stakeholders as outlined in the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan's points of agreement. Specifically, staff believe there's an opportunity here for the recently announced text amendment zoning for economic opportunity to further engage businesses and stakeholders and also consider new tools that can be adapted to the Gowanus IPC. In some, staff believe that the development's proposed commercial use will activate the ground floor and promote local job growth, while the proposed residential is well aligned with citywide housing goals, including fair housing, by increasing sorely needed capacity for new housing that will create more opportunities for low-income households to live in Gowanus. On that particular note, staff want to clarify that changing the proposed zoning district either by lowering the residential capacity or reducing its size will directly limit new housing growth, including the development of income restricted units based on MIH. And moreover, lowering the district would reduce the potential that these sites could be developed with MIH, as lowering the density or FAR would put them below the threshold to provide mixed income housing in many cases. With that, I'm happy to elaborate further. But again, the department does support this application. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jonah, for your work on this and for your clear recommendation. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next one, Ryan.
Yeah, we have the Gateway Site 26A and Phase 5 development. And Connie Chan is here with the agency's recommendation. Connie?
Good afternoon.
Hi, Connie.
Hello. I'm just waiting for, will we have a slide? If not, I can proceed.
Yeah, we have a slide, I think, but we can go ahead and start.
Okay, great. So I will just, oh, wonderful. So the department supports the proposed actions, which are an urban development action area designation and UDAP approval with disposition, as well as an urban renewal plan amendment. These actions would facilitate the development of an 8-story mixed-use building with 189 affordable units for seniors, as well as community facility space on a vacant site in the northeast portion of the Fresh Creek urban renewal area in the Spring Creek neighborhood of East New York, Community District 5. The change in the use designation to allow for residential uses in a building that is in context with the surrounding area and consistent with the underlying zoning is appropriate, given the site's proximity to other residential uses. And the community will benefit from the addition of affordable housing, especially low-income senior housing. The proposed actions will also facilitate a more efficient building typology for the development of 560 affordable dwelling units in 9 4-story multifamily buildings on a vacant site in the northwest portion of the urban renewal area without changing the proposed density, building heights, or total number of units planned for that site. Therefore, the proposed actions support a sound land use rationale and a well-considered plan. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you for your recommendation and for your work on this, Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Connie, for the presentation, and also thank you for the report. I thought it was a really thorough document, really clear. I specifically appreciate the reference to the 500-year floodplain and the language on what the commission is encouraging. I'm wondering, and this is really more of a question for all of us, but acting as the city's coastal commission, I'm wondering if we could use a little bit more stronger language there in terms of not just encouraging new developments to explore and implement measures, but here, I mean, I think that we can say, based on the projections that the Department of City Planning has published in the flood hazard mapper, that this is going to be very much subject to the 100-year floodplain in the coming years. So I'm wondering if there's anything that we can include in here that is, highlighting that this is city land, this is a city action, and that this is going to be very, very vulnerable.
Yes, I think we can do that. I think as you gave us, I think, a good framework for some language there, where we just sort of state the facts of what we know and what's projected, and then state that the resiliency measures are sort of essential for the future of this development. Connie,
Thank
you got that? You can draft
Yeah,
something. We'll-
I'm happy to do that.
we'll,
And that's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll put
Thank
that
you.
in the final report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Connie. Okay, with that, we will be voting on this one, and we appreciate your recommendation, the department's recommendation, and for all your work on this. Let's go on to the next one, Ryan.
Yes, so also for consideration on Wednesday, our 280 Benedict Road, Sheldon Avenue, and Richard Avenue. These three applications are certifications pursuant to, I believe, the South Richmond Special District and Staten Island. Staff believe findings for all these certifications have been met and are recommending approval.
Great, thank you.
For post-hearing follow-up, we have the Innovative Urban Village. Carenza is here to discuss.
Commissioners, so on August 24th, the City Planning Commission held a public hearing on the Innovative Urban Village project. This presentation has been prepared to respond to issues raised by the Commission at the public hearing. Next slide, please. Issues regarding resiliency and open space were raised. Commissioner Osorio noted that a small portion of the site is within the 500-year floodplain at the intersection of Flatlands and Louisiana Avenues, and noted that the proposed site plan is open at this intersection. Commissioner also noted that removing street trees at this location and along Flatlands could be an issue to flood risk. At the public hearing, the applicant provided an initial response stating that the site would be elevated out of the 500-year floodplain through 2080 through site grading, that the low point of the site would be planted with permeable materials to help absorb water and reduce the impact of water traveling into the site, that critical building mechanical systems would be elevated, that residential entries and ground floor residential uses would be located in the interior of the site with higher elevations. As well, they are increasing porous open space from approximately 29,000 square feet to 46,000 square feet, as well as increasing trees from 125 to 150. The applicant has since confirmed that the existing street trees will generally remain. In addition to these points, the applicant is committed to sustainable measures, including landscaping and catchment areas to control stormwater runoff around the buildings. Next slide, please. So just to illustrate this, for context, you can see the small portion of the site that is within the 500-year floodplain. While the project site is not within the 100-year floodplain today, the commissioner points out that the perimeter of the site is within the 500-year floodplain, and by 2050, the project site is projected to be adjacent to the 100-year floodplain at the intersection of Louisiana and Flatlands Avenue. Because of grade changes, the interior of the site falls outside of the 500-year floodplain today, and much of it would continue to remain outside of the floodplain in 2050. Next slide, please. The existing conditions today at this intersection include a gazebo that is screened with trees. These trees were planted by the CCC years ago to serve as a screening for the parking lot. Next slide, please. And this is a close-up of this condition today. The applicant has noted that the existing trees located within the property line, primarily around the perimeter of the parking lot, they will be removed once the parking lot is eliminated and construction of the new buildings begins. The applicant has stated that the trees located where the affordable housing is being built will need to be removed to allow the units to be built. Next slide, please. And then this is the proposed condition. The applicant notes the low point of the site at the intersection of Flatlands and Louisiana Avenues is planted with permeable materials to help absorb water and reduce the impact of water traveling into the site. Next slide, please. Further, the applicant has stated that the project will add more trees than currently exists at the project site and will locate them in the areas anticipated to be used by the public, including at the entry plaza, in the central quad, and along the private streets. The applicant believes that this organization leaves significant trees around the perimeter in the form of street trees while locating others in the optimal areas of the project site. Further, the applicant states that these trees will be in addition to the street trees currently located on the sidewalks around the perimeter of the project site. It is anticipated that the sidewalk trees will remain except in the limited areas where the existing trees conflict with the proposed curb cut into the project site, construction logistics, or utility requirements. Next slide, please. I also want to add that as highlighted at the public hearing, the applicant intends to make minor changes to the filed application, including a reduction in stories on buildings along flatlands. Next slide, please. So these were the original building heights with a maximum of 15 stories along flatlands. Next slide, please. And in red here, it shows where the applicant is proposing to reduce the number of stories, going from 15 to 14, 14 to 13, 13 to 12, and then 14 to 13 and 14 to 13. And that is the end of the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioner Osorio, oh, sorry, you got, Mr. Commissioner, you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much,
Yep.
Chair, and thanks so much for the presentation. Thanks so much for following up on the questions. I really appreciate it. And I also appreciated very much how the applicant responded and addressed the questions at the hearing. I think that, and these slides are super clear in terms of how the site grading and the permeable materials proposed are going to be addressing the issue inside the block. But I'm not sure that they fully answer the question in terms of what's going to happen along flatlands. I think that also I wanted to point out how the DIS very firmly assures that the subject is not going to be vulnerable or close to a 100-year floodplain given the projections, and that's actually not. I'm seeing something different. So I'm wondering if we could kind of like basically sort of anticipate a little bit what are those refinements that are going to increase really permeability on the street. If you think about it, the site grading is going to absolutely protect the interior, but it's going to move the water toward the street. And so, yes, I hear that there's an intention to increase permeability on the street, but everything that I see on the maps is increasing permeability inside the block, not outside. And so, I think that this is, I want to emphasize this question just because it sounds to me that this is going to be a situation that we're going to be facing throughout this corridor. An area that is very close to the waterfront, where there's important development potential, but where the 500-year floodplain is going to turn into the 100-year floodplain really quickly. I mean, the maps, the DCP maps on the hazards mitigation mapper show us that. So I guess my question is, you said they are working on some refinements to that open space. Is that something? When can we see what that is going to entail?
So they are currently working on revising the application. Some of the open design refinements include adding additional public amenities like benches throughout the site. We can continue to take these comments back to the team to see what else could be under consideration to address these concerns.
That would be great. Thank you. And I think that, again, I want to highlight how responsive this top-notch consulting team has been. But I think that in terms of the treatment of the sidewalk and the permeability of that area, I think that a lot of what is being designed for inside could also happen outside.
Okay, noted. Thank you for that. I'll take it back.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, let us move on, Ryan, to the next item.
Certainly. So we have 1571 McDonald Avenue rezoning. Staff have not prepared anything, but if there's any further questions that we can take back to the applicant and get those answers for you.
Commissioner Osorio, do you have your hand raised on this one?
Well, thank you, Chair. Actually, I had another question for the previous project. Is this still a good time?
Sure.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Still here, yeah.
Thank you. Just really quickly, I just wanted to ask whether there had been any response to some of the concerns or the comments made by Mr. Watkins at the public hearing in terms of like representing the industrial businesses in terms of the need for a pedestrian study or to further understand the impacts of the project on pedestrian traffic in and around the site.
A response has not been prepared to that yet, but we do have subsequent meetings ahead of the vote.
Thank you.
Great. Now, moving on, are there questions on 1571 McDonald Avenue? If none, we will move on to the next one.
Yeah, we have 4025 Crescent Street rezoning. Again, staff haven't prepared anything on this follow-up, but if there's any further questions, we can. All right. 7946 Metropolitan Avenue rezoning. Likewise, I thought the applicants and did a good job of addressing things at the hearing, but if there's any further questions. And 7918 164th Street rezoning. Also, is there any questions on that? I'm not seeing any hands raised. So for Livonia 4, I will state that HPD is working on a comprehensive response to issues raised at the hearing. So we will be back on September 19th to convey those to the commission. So if there's any further questions on that, we'd like to hear them. And I will also note that Commissioner Goodridge, who's not able to be here today, had raised some questions and asked HPD to address with more detail the issues with the concerns raised by the neighbors and the encroachments on the properties. And so we are specifically asking HPD to do so in their follow-up.
Great. We'll look forward to that.
And I see a hand raised.
Okay, let's go ahead, Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Just another quick point on perhaps the next steps with the conversation with HPD. I thought it was a really interesting conversation to talk about what is the city's policy when we're talking about non-required parking lots, particularly in a case where we are discussing public land use for and creating these parking lots for a supermarket, where I just wanted to draw attention on this as an opportunity for us to discuss, how does our parking policy connect with the need for perhaps smaller, fresh, affordable food options that could be at a walking distance as compared to defaulting to supermarkets that may require these parking lots, especially when we're talking about high, well equipped transit areas like in this particular case.
Certainly, we can convey that to HPD, and I also would say that the Department of City Planning has some thoughts that we could collect and convey on that as well.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, and then last but certainly not least, we have the Innovation Queens rezoning and large scale general development, and Alexis Wheeler is here with a follow-up.
Thank you, Ryan, and good afternoon, commissioners. This application is returning for a post-hearing follow-up after the public hearing on August 10th. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, this is a private application for a rezoning, a general large-scale special permit, and additional related actions affecting an area located in Astoria, Queens, Community District 1. The applicant partnership includes Kaufman Astoria Studios, Bedrock Real Estate Partners, and Silverstein Properties. Together, the team proposes a mixed-use development totaling approximately 2.7 million square feet, including more than 2,800 residential units, more than 700 of which will be affordable, nearly 200,000 square feet of commercial development, an additional 230,000 square feet of office space, and more than 2 acres of publicly accessible open areas. The total lot area within the project area is roughly 500,000 square feet, and that includes lots not owned and controlled by the applicant team. Next slide, please. And this is just a quick overview of the actions being sought here. And additionally, as mentioned before, the project area is located in Southern Astoria. In this zoning map for the area, the project is highlighted in blue. So the project area encompasses 5 blocks bounded by 35th Avenue, 43rd Street, Northern Boulevard, 36th Avenue, and 37th Street. The majority of the project area is located in an M11 zoning district that was established with the adoption of the zoning resolution in 1961. And then a portion of the project area which fronts on Steinway Street was rezoned in 1998 to a C42 district to support the commercial corridor. To the immediate north, this portion of Astoria is primarily zoned R5 with east-west corridors in R6 contextual districts with commercial overlays. And the project area is also proximate to the Long Island City Special Mixed Use District to the southwest, where we have well-established MX zoning districts. And to facilitate this development, the applicant team proposes this series of actions, which include the zoning map amendment, 3 zoning text amendments, and multiple special permits in order to modify bulk, signage, parking, loading, and use regulations to facilitate the overall development. Next slide, please. As mentioned ahead of the public hearing, while this application was not subject to local law 78, which went into effect on June 1st, a few months after the project certified, due to the scale of the project, the applicant team submitted a voluntary racial equity report on housing and opportunity. This did also come at the request of the community. The applicant states that the proposal would produce new income restricted housing units in a location that has a higher annual median household income compared to the citywide average and is highly accessible to transit and jobs. The median household income for Astoria is roughly $70,000 annually. Next slide, please. And this is just an overview of the area's demographics. The broader borough of Queens and the rest of the city on a whole has larger shares of Hispanic, Black, and Asian residents compared to Community District 1 in Queens. Next slide, please. So during the public hearing, the commission raised a number of questions, and we wanted to take the opportunity to address some of those during this presentation. The first point is related to how the project has evolved in response to the community's concerns. And we're prepared to share some updated drawings and materials that show how the project has attempted to be responsive to that feedback. The second point is related to the project's environmental impacts, especially with respect to shadows and active recreation impacts. So we'll also be touching on that here. And the third is related to questions about the applicant's community outreach strategy. The applicant provided a list of organizations that they've spoken with throughout the duration of the process, and that was included in your briefing packages. Next slide, please. So in order to be responsive to the feedback heard from the community and workshops held during ULURP, the community board and the borough president hearings, the applicant team is proposing a series of modifications for the commission to contemplate. And these include a modification to the overall site plan and massing, including a reduction in heights to several towers and the removal of an entire tower, as well as some of the internal PAAs, so public access areas that are within the project. There's also been a scaling back of some of the portions of the project subject to the retail special permit. Next, we're also going to look at a modification to the parking, both with respect to the quantity proposed and the applicability of the special permit action related to the parking. Next, there will be a brief introduction to some potential urban design controls to encourage variation in the design. And finally, we'll take a look at the modification to the PAA on the southern portion of Block A, which will be providing active recreation for the project. Next slide, please. And so just to refresh everyone's memory, this is the certified massing, which again contains about 2 million square feet of residential floor area, as well as commercial, retail, and community facility spaces. Next slide, please. Now, this massing is an alternative being proposed by the applicant team. This massing view shows changes made to the overall distribution of floor area on the sites, starting from Block A and moving eastward to Block E. I'll be describing some of these modifications. Just for clarity and understanding, you will see 2 different kind of yellowish colors here. The more pure yellow is where residential floor area is going to be retained. The more orangey, yellowish color is where some floor area has moved from one part of the project to that location. So that orange color really is meant to denote the relocated floor area. So starting with block A, one of the changes to that block is again the redistribution of floor area. So this block is more of a receiving site at this point. And again, that's shown in orange from elsewhere within the project. So it does result in an increase in height across the residential building in the mid-block, as well as the removal of a secondary PAA that was fronting on 38th Street. So this changes that residential form to an internal courtyard building, which is fully enclosed by that residential programming now. The PAA on the southern portion of the block, though, has been increased to almost a ½ acre to provide for the active recreation programming. Then as we move eastward to block B, the tower at the corner of 35th Street, or yes, at 35th and Steinway is reduced 5 stories to 17 stories. And that floor area, some of that floor area is added to the residential form to the south. A similar modification to block A was made where that secondary mid-block PAA space was removed and residential floor area has been placed in that location to create an enclosed internal courtyard. Then moving to block C, this is one of the areas where the community has shared concern about the tower located south of Playground 35 on block C. And so this tower is reduced by 3 stories in height to partially address those concerns. If we move into block D, this is one of the areas where we see the most significant change being proposed with the full removal of the tower on its northwest corner across the street from 3- and 4-story apartments. So now the lower base consists solely of the cinema programming. And there is also care in terms of how the signage proposal will work for this area to ensure that it's avoiding inappropriate residential exposure. The apartments across the street have been a particular area of focus and concern for the community board and the council member. And so again, this is what has really driven the redistribution of that bulk. The mid-block portion of the residential floor area has received some of that relocated floor area, and the tower closer to Northern Boulevard remains the same height. Finally, on block E, we saw from 9 to 8 stories on the building that's fronting on 35th, again, to try to respect the lower scale context of the established apartments across the street. And the southerly tower on Northern Boulevard increased by 1 story. So next slide, please. And this massing really just shows what the proposed alternative is, but looking southeast along 36th and Northern Boulevard. And next slide, please. And this is showing the refigured site plan and a summary of the modifications to the left. The former locations of the PAA on blocks A and B are also in the dashed maroon line, and the PAA on block A, that's on the southern portion of the block, will be shown in a subsequent slide. Next slide, please. Another proposed modification is related to the retail special permit. So at the point of certification, the applicant had requested retail special permits across all 5 blocks of the project area in order to provide flexibility to permit retail spaces larger than 10,000 square feet. The intention was to relocate the existing PC Richard & Son appliance store and keep that retail use within the project area. The applicant team has also proposed a potential grocery store within the project, which would serve local residents within the development and the surrounding area. And so that is also the other type of program that they would need the special permit for. Next slide, please. So the applicability of the special permit has been reduced in order to address the community board's concerns about the large retail within the project area. So the applicant reduced it to where the where retail is really most likely to locate itself, and that's colored in that sort of pink color within the plan. So these businesses would be located adjacent to 35th Avenue, a wide street with existing retail and commercial uses, or on Northern Boulevard, one of the borough's major thoroughfares that already has a number of large format retail uses. So again, this is essentially reducing the applicability of the special permit to the blocks that are circled in blue and to the locations that are highlighted in pink. Next slide, please. And now the parking reduction. So the certified application proposed 1,390 parking spaces, though only 949 spaces are required by zoning. This is an area that's very well served by transit. There are 4 subway lines and multiple bus lines in the area. And so the applicant was encouraged to explore a reduction in parking in this area. So the reduction is also a response to community concerns about excessive parking within the project area, and was also raised by the commission's questions. And so the applicant team is proposing to provide additional potential benefits, including electric vehicle charging stations and multimodal transportation, in addition to the already existing rich transit network in the neighborhood. And so again, the reduction in parking is really just bringing us to the minimum required by zoning and no longer exceeds that. And then the special permit is really mostly the ability to shift some of the parking spaces from Block E, for example, to Block A. Next slide, please. So the next proposed modification has to do with incorporating urban design controls into the project's language. This is a very large scale and transformative project with a lot of new building forms being introduced to the area. So the modifications in this case to incorporate the urban design controls will really help to break up some of these building facades, especially those that are relatively long on these long Astoria blocks. And will also encourage the designers to provide other types of distinction between the buildings and between the architecture to reduce some of the effects of these long street walls in the project area. So an example of these controls would be the addition of language within the special permits to include recesses along some of the building facades and changing in materiality or facade type. So this will help create some variety and visual interest across the large scale project without having a net change in the proposal's density or floor area. And so this image is showing where you may see some variation between facade types based on where these colors are changing in the overall massing. And next slide, please. So next we're going to be stepping into the environmental review. So the FEIS is scheduled to be published on Thursday, September 8th, and the applicant has been working on the following outstanding impacts. For the impact on libraries, the team is working with the Queens Public Library to provide funding for additional space and support services. For the public childcare facilities, the applicant will coordinate with the Department of Education to provide appropriate mitigation measures, which may include suitable space on site for a publicly funded early childhood program facility, provision of a suitable location off-site and within reasonable distance, or funding to support additional capacity elsewhere. These commitments will be outlined in the FEIS and the restrictive declaration. In regards to the open space impact, there is an active recreation impact that the team has addressed by expanding active recreation areas within the project area, including an expansion of the publicly accessible open space on Block A in the proposed alternative massing. Due to the size of the proposed development, there will be an incremental shadows cast on Playground 35 year-round, though there will be no impacts on any other sun-sensitive resources. Next slide, please. And so this is showing the proposed open space on Block A. So this PAA, which is just over a ½ acre in size, is proposed to hold a child playscape as well as flexible play fields to address the mitigation for the active recreation impact. Next slide, please. And this is a series of diagrams that shows some of the possible programmatic uses for the flexible play field, including youth soccer, volleyball, track and fitness, pickleball, and badminton. Next slide, please. Now for transportation, there are impacts to transportation in 3 categories, being traffic, transit, and pedestrian. Out of 42 intersections that were analyzed, 23 will be impacted. 8 will be fully mitigated and 15 will remain unmitigated. The impact to transit would affect morning rush hour along the southbound northwest track. Mitigation would require the addition of 1 more southbound northwest train during the AM peak hour. So again, that's really touching on train capacity. Pedestrian impacts were confirmed after sidewalks, crosswalks, and corners in the surrounding area were analyzed. 3 sidewalks and 2 crosswalks were impacted. So widening of both crosswalks would mitigate the impacts at each of those locations. Next slide, please. Now for air quality and construction. Additional analysis conducted between the DEIS and FEIS has determined that previously identified annual PM 2.5 impacts have been avoided. So there will be an adverse impact during construction phasing, including an impact on traffic at 14 intersections, as well as a noise impact, which will be mitigated by careful placement of construction equipment, barriers, and enclosures away from nearby residences. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the applicant team is proposing a zoning map amendment, 3 zoning text amendments, and multiple special permits in order to modify bulk signage, parking loading, and use regulations to facilitate the development, which would realize approximately 2,800 dwelling units, 711 of which would be affordable, roughly 500,000 square feet of commercial and community facility, and more than 2 acres of open space. And the applicant is proposing this series of modifications for the commission to contemplate and also to be responsive to feedback from the ULURP process to date. And overall, while the proposed development presents a significant change to the existing context, this is an area of Queens that is ready for transformative development that will bring new and permanently affordable housing and open space to an area lacking in both today. So I am now available for any questions the commission may have.
Great, thank you very much, Alexis. And I appreciate your running us through those changes. They are they're significant changes, they're meaningful changes, and you know, and I certainly agree with your perspective that this is an area that is ready for something exciting to happen here on these sites. So we've got questions from a variety of people. So let me go to Commissioner Bozorg first, to be followed by Commissioner Rampersad.
Great, thanks. And thanks for all this information. It's really appreciated, Alexis. I guess I have a couple questions. One is not hearing or seeing anything related to additional affordability or more affordable units. Do we know, is the development team basically still working on that and it's expected to maybe come later in the process? Are they just any update you have on that? And then this other question I have is, it's not really a question for the development team. It's really, during the hearing, we did hear from a number of residents who were concerned about or raising issues that were going on in nearby residences, like that were very clearly illegal forms of harassment. And they were articulating that as a potential form of harassment out of fear of, anticipation that more development was going to be happening and people being cleared out. So I was just curious if there's been any follow-up with HPD or other agencies about whether there is an actual uptick in reported issues like that, like gas turnoffs, or I just don't want that to fully fall off. I know that's not necessarily the developer's responsibility, but I do think it's the city's responsibility to kind of follow up on flags like that and employ any preservation or enforcement techniques that we have at the city's disposal to respond to that. So those are my two main questions. And then also just confirming, and I appreciate, it sounds like the parking is being reduced to the minimum zoning requirement. That's what they're recommending. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, so thank you so much for those questions, Commissioner Bozorg. So, and as I was just nodding, yes, the parking is being reduced to the zoning minimum. We have not had a recent conversation with HPD regarding kind of the status of potential harassment in this area, but we will certainly circle back with them, and I'll be able to report back in the next review session where we discuss this project. And then sorry, could you remind me of your first question?
Just the housing affordability, whether they're going to go deeper or add more affordable units, if that's something
yes,
negotiating or and plan to present later, or
So it is something that the applicant team is still negotiating and working on. It is something that they have been actively evolving and working with electeds on, as well as HPD. So, I don't know that we will have additional information within the commission's window, but I do expect that in the not so distant future, we will hear more about kind of deeper or expanded affordability for this project.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rampershad, be followed by Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Alexis, for that presentation. And just to follow up on Commissioner Bozarg's comments, I was going to ask about the affordability, because I did see they made a lot of changes to the heights of the buildings and the parking, but the affordability was another big component of this project, which was, as you know, the community board was vocal, the borough president was vocal about it. So I'm just curious to see where they're at and when will they get back to us on if they are making changes, what those numbers are going to be. I have two questions. What mechanism is going to be written in or in the special permit with regards to addressing that now that they reduced the heights around the park, was it 24 stories to 17 stories, and where the theater is, it doesn't say how many stories it's going to be. Do you happen to know what the height would be in that particular, on block B? It was on one of the slides. I forget the slide number, but it wasn't mentioned. So I was just curious.
Yes. So Jeff, that's slide 9. Would you be able to go to that slide, please? And so on block D, where the tower was removed. So given the program of the cinema, the floor-to-floor heights tend to be much taller than standard commercial, which we usually would say is 15 feet floor-to-floor, or residential, which, as you well know, is typically 10 feet floor-to-floor. They've generally been modeling the cinema with, I believe, 25-foot floor-to-floor heights. I think we would be looking at up to a 50-foot street wall height before the setback, and they actually do a much deeper than standard setback on that block before the kind of third story of the cinema steps up. I can make sure that in a follow-up we have some more specific dimensions shown there, but I do know that given the cinema programming and kind of the typical setup of cinema spaces, it does tend to have taller floor-to-floor heights than other types of programming.
And thank you. And my last question is with regards to the shadow study. I know that now that the height's been changed, if they can provide those diagrams, I guess in the next presentation, it'd be great to see. Thank
Absolutely.
You.
Thank
you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. And Alexis, thanks so much for the presentation, but also thanks so much for the tour. That was incredibly useful. The materials, it was really just great to walk through the project site area and hear your thoughts in terms of the evolution of the ideas, but also the impacts of the scale of the project and the proposed massing. That was really useful. Thank you. I had a couple questions. The first one, building on Commissioner Bozarg and Rampershat's question about potential, let's say, displacement / potential harassment. I wanted to ask you, I know that this has been used in other places of the city as part of previous rezonings, and I'm wondering, whether we could consider some type of certificate of no harassment in connection or tag teaming with HPD to address some of the concerns raised at the hearing from residents in terms of residential, but also I was wondering, given kind of like the history of your office working with MX districts in other parts of Queens, how to address potential displacement or harassment to the businesses. I was really impressed with the activity along or around site block E with the auto shops when we were there, and I don't see sort of their needs reflected in the urban design or the proposed in the proposal basically. And so in my mind, this MX district comes across as a more cultural in spirit, and so I'm wondering, what is going to be the impact on the industrial businesses and specifically the auto shops. So let me stop there. I have another question, but I wanted to hear your thoughts in terms of what is possible. What do you think? What is the position of the department in this regard?
Certainly, thank you so much for this question. And we will certainly circle back with HPD and do what we can to secure the certificate of no harassment and make sure that we are following up on any documented cases or on that front. When it comes to a similar program for businesses, which is something that we also discussed, that doesn't exist today. That is certainly something that we can be talking to some of our colleagues about, and whether that's something that we could begin to innovate as a new program within this administration. Real priority around economic development. The applicant team themselves, they are connecting directly with business owners across the project area. I can make sure that in our follow-up conversation, we have more updates about kind of the status of those current conversations. In the case of the MX, something that is really promising about it is that there is room for future light industrial uses within the overall project area. So these are not excluded by any means, but there is an opportunity for them to be able to kind of remain in place or potentially relocate within the project area in the future. That said, some of these businesses do also kind of occupy some of the public realm in a way where we can also see some conflicts with pedestrian and other types of uses in the area. And so, I think that where they may potentially locate within or around the project would also have to be contemplated, just to again make sure that we're sort of limiting future conflicts, especially when pedestrian safety is involved. But I'll work with the applicant team on kind of getting a more robust response on that front with you, because again, while they're not necessarily specifically planning those uses within the project, there is nothing today that kind of precludes them from remaining within the project area or relocating within it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I guess to be super specific I guess the question is, what are the applicants' intentions, or are they willing to work with you on potential provisions to make this MX mix enforceable, and really making sure that there's a retention of these companies? Because I was impressed with how lively it was, acknowledging kind of like your observations in terms of the use of the sidewalk and so forth. Really quickly, I had another question about the removal of the public areas, and in response to some of the concerns that we heard about the open space and the urban design. I was wondering if you can expand a little bit, or if whether the community board and some of the local residents have been involved in these decisions. These seem rather sort of like structural changes directly related with concerns that people raised at the public hearing. And I'm wondering, have they been engaged in this? And I just want to clarify something that I think you said, which is that these open spaces are being replaced with housing.
Yes, and Jeffrey, could you please open slide 11, please, just so we have the site plan to refer to? Thank you. So this applicant team actually during the CB, the community board window of ULURP, they did hold a couple of public workshops, and some of them were specifically focused on the discussion of the open spaces and public access areas within the project. Both before certification and during certification, there were concerns specifically raised about these two public access areas on Block A and Block B. And that was largely driven by the way in which they were entirely enveloped on three sides by the predominantly residential programming. And so there were some concerns about those spaces feeling overly private, even though they were intended to be offered to the public. And so to sort of shift the opportunity for open space and publicly accessible open space into an area that would feel truly public and truly accessible, that's a big driver behind what they then put into the southern portion of Block A with that larger public access area, where they will both have their active recreation, but it is also entirely open to the street on three sides and feels much more public, similar to the way that the public access area on Block C, being open on three sides, feels much more public than in fact having residential programming on three sides. And so the team did feel that this was something that was responsive to what they heard during the ULURP process to date. And it was also something that was shared during the workshops that they hosted during ULURP as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you.
And Ryan, back to you.
Yeah, that is the end of our agenda for today. So.
Okay, I had a feeling that's what you were
Yes.
going to say. Tell us what our voting date is on this project, if it is known or certain.
Believe that Innovation Queens is scheduled for a vote on September 21st.
Okay.
So we
Great.
can talk about it on the 19th, but there will be a vote following.
Great. So there will be time for a little bit more update, follow up,
A little bit, yeah.
and vote on the 21st. Okay. Great. Well, with that, let me just thank the commission for your time and energy today, and of course the staff for all of their hard work. Just a reminder: today is Tuesday. We are back at it tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for our public hearing and votes. So we will look forward to seeing you all at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, and hope you all stay dry and enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.